Dear students, today we are going to discuss about social context of Indian administration. This lesson is going to discuss about Indian society and Indian administration, the correlationship between these two. The interrelationship between the state and society has been an important theme in the evolution of political systems in the past century. That the state is deeply embedded in society and that societal variables do affect the autonomy and performance of the state is now an accepted fact. Whether it is the system theorist or the dependency theorist or the ecologist interpreters of public administration, all seem to agree that in any society, interactions between the state, its socio-political structures and its administrative framework ultimately determine its policy outcome. Such interactions not only help pattern societal preferences, but also pave the way to political and administrative developments in the context of divisiveness within and between classes, ethnic and religious segments, interest groups, or linguistic differences. The literature on comparative public administration is replete with the emphasis on interaction and interrelationship between an administrative system and its external environment and the impact of socio-cultural values on bureaucratic behavior. The process of political and administrative changes and vice versa. While scholars have concentrated more on the study of the state's capacity to bring about socio-economic change through the evolution of a pattern of political and administrative institutions, little attention has been paid to understanding the impact that the socio-political structures in any society make on its political or administrative development. This lesson is concerned with an analysis of the socio-economic political structure in a complex and developing society, that of India, with a view to discern the interrelationship between its social and economic political structures containing policy changes and administrative development. The attempt is to show that although a highly heterogeneous and complex social system with the traditional diversified religious cultural values creates enormous pressures on its public administration system, it does not necessarily stifle administrative development. The need is to coordinate policy and administrative changes in a manner so as not only to respond to the growing socio-economic compulsions of the society, but also to enable its people to participate in the political administrative processes. Institutional strategies. India was one of the first of the British colonies to gain independence from the yoke of an imperial power. After attaining freedom in 1947, the challenge before the political leadership was to frame a well-conceived strategy of change, development and nation building, and to forge instrumentalities thereof, both the mobilizational and institutional, to attempt to achieve a modicum of economic and political development in the aftermath of a partition through a democratic political system, while undertaking at the same time reconstruction of a hardened social structure not only deeply rooted to the age-old traditions, but highly fragmented, was indeed a formidable task. The four basic objectives of socio-economic and political development uppermost in the minds of political leaders at the time were: number one, the creation of a stable democratic polity; number two, laying the foundations of a self-reliant economy for rapid growth; number three, attainment of social justice through the elimination of discrimination based on class, caste, sex, religion and eradication of poverty; fourth one is rebuilding of the dilapidated administrative structure to be able to withstand the pressures generated by the growing demands and aspiration of the expectant masses. The leadership in India responded by channelizing the process through the creation of a state system based on Western liberal democratic ideology of freedom and equality, incorporating the parliamentary system of government, reconciling it with the concept of economic planning, and reforming the administrative machinery to enable it to respond to the growing exigencies and requirements of a social system divided by a variety of socio-cultural identities. Although the framing of a new political setup with its institutions, structures and the rules of the game have proved to be matters of a incalculable difficulty for many of the new nations of Asia and Africa, India presented a striking contrast. Not only was an elaborate state system created with a great speed, but the democratic structure it established was institutionalized in considerable detail. This had been possible because of both the antecedent agreement of fundamentals and continuing diffusion of these agreements in the generation that followed independence. Even as early as 1928, the Motilal Nehru Committee had framed a complete draft spelling out the features of free India's polity. It's recommended, among other things, a parliamentary form and a federal structure of the government and an exhaustive list of fundamental rights. These recommendations found overwhelming support among the members of the Constituent Assembly in the late 1940s. In order to prevent the country from falling into pieces, certain restraints on the power of some institutions and the freedom of individuals were introduced. For example, the central government was armed with the effective powers against the constituent states. Similarly, preventive detention to strengthen the government's hands came to be accepted as a necessary provision despite its restrictions of the most fundamental rights of the democratic citizen. Indian social context. Institutional strategies alone are not enough for conceiving a process of change, development and national building. Social structures and environmental factors do affect the state and the administrative system and hence the development of the polity. The significance of these factors multiplies all the more in a pluralist society of India where the nation shares loyalties with a variety of other socio-cultural identities. These identities have contributed both to the process of its development as well as to its decay. While they have played a major mediating role between politics and society, translating group loyalties into focal points of political solidarity, at the same time they have given rise to a number of fissparious and separatist framework, thus weakening its overall capacity for development. The Indian population, which has reached 1 billion at the end of the 20th century, is divided by religion, sex, language, caste, dress and even by the food habits. These divisions have been further compounded by the gap between the rich and the poor, the English-speaking elite and the vernacular masses and the urban and the rural. In its diversity and continental size, India shares most of the characteristics of the European community than the more integrated multi-ethnic and unified policies of the United States. India contains all of the major world religions. It is subdivided into a myriad of castes. It has 22 official languages provided in the 8th schedule of the Constitution, plus English as a continued official language and 1,000 other dialectics and many tribal tongues. Politically and administratively, these diverse groups are organized into 29 states after the creation of Uttaranchal, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and Telangana and other 7 union territories. The process of mobilization and social change in the last 50 years has heightened the sense of awareness of the political and administrative development, whereas such factors have led to political and administrative decay in most developing societies. In India, these have provided potential for administrative reliance and growth. Impact of religion. A major social factor that affects political and administrative development is religion. All major religions of the world, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism and Sikhism, originated in India. Islam and Christianity came to India in the medieval period. The vast majority of the population, almost 80.5%, are however Hindus while Muslims constitute 13% of the total population and the third largest concentration of the Muslims in the world. The major source of conflicts in the society have been between the two major and important religions, that is Hinduism and Islam. It has been further compounded by the developments in Kashmir during the last 25 years. This explains the growth in the number of paramilitary and police forces and other intelligence security agencies that have come to dominate the administrative system in India: the Central Reserve Police Force, the Border Security Force, the Industrial Force, the VIP Security Commandos, SPGs, etc. Not only these have created problems of development and administrative coordination, but have also often been a cause of resentment and tensions between the central government and government of the states. The developmental capacities, the administration have certainly received some setback, if not been completely destroyed. The caste system. The social system in India is organized around caste structures and caste identities which are as old as the Indian civilization. Tribal, linguistic, religious, regional and caste loyalties, the fundamental characteristics of the social infrastructure of the Indian society, have made a deep impact on the working of political and administrative system and have affected the process of development. Caste is undoubtedly an all India phenomenon in the sense that there are everywhere hereditary endogamous groups which form a hierarchy. Caste, being the important organizational structure, has hampered development process and proved to be the most important cause responsible for backwardness and economic inequality. In its original form, the system was associated with social hierarchy based on occupations, but later on it has become the negative feature of the society when its basis became by birth, not by occupation. The caste system in India, as it has emerged, stratified the society socially, corrupted it politically and weakened it economically. After the independence, the caste system grew further. Regionalism had taken the shape of caste consciousness and caste mobilization. Politicization of the caste system became the new trend in Indian politics. In the process, not only Hindus of upper class, but the outcasts, that so-called untouchables, also came to play an important role. In order to ameliorate the conditions of these sections of the society, the state in India devised the means of according to special privileges to the scheduled caste and tribal and backward classes as these communities were described in the constitution. These concessions were given to these communities for a limited transitional period only. The lower caste dilemma is still there and it has created further discontent and conflict in the society. It needs to be made clear that the reservation system that is being resisted is not what has been conceded to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. It is the expanding base of reservations among the so-called backward castes and other backward classes that threatens to produce a backlash. The vested interest in backwardness that the system of reservation has created might further lead to a realignment of communities on lines that can only perpetuate the present division. Secularism, casteism and religious values. Secularism has been a distinguished characteristic of India's composite culture. As a policy of the government after independence, secularism, as Nehru conceived, was designed to safeguard the peace and security of the minorities. Renunciation of revivalism and obscurantism of religion and recognition of differences and non-confrontationities in socio-religious affairs. The state in India, as the constitution provides, is neutral in matters of religion, but provides opportunity for all regions to flourish subject to public order, morality and health. Yet religion has been a dominating factor and a force in the politico-administrative culture in India, despite the fact that new culture of science and technology has had a healthy impact of intermingling the different communities and religions. The Indian culture, which has been a history of unity and synthesis of reconciliation and growth of harmony and assimilation of fusion of old traditions and new values has several contradictory forces within its fold. The forces of progress and regress have simultaneously worked on Indian culture. At the same time, it has been dominated by individualistic ethos, a stratified society, and the theories of dharma and karma, the institutions of caste based on occupations, and the inequalities brought in the social system due to the caste hierarchy. All these cultural factors have not only been reflected in the political processes, but also find their expression in the developmental of administrative policies. A number of developmental policies and programs of the government have even been influenced both in their conception and implementation through these cultural imperatives. Not only the political process have been affected by these forces, but in many cases bureaucratic functionaries belonging to the high caste have felt constrained to visit places inhabited by the low caste citizens in the course of their official dealings. The social classes urban-rural dichotomy. The social structure in India consists of powerful status groups based on religion, caste and language. Although a class system has also begun to emerge in India, it still remains tenuous. The slow process of industrialization and urbanization has led to a highly uneven pattern of class growth. Status groups continue to cut across class lines. As a result, the development of class identities and political mobilization based upon class appeals has been securely inhibited. India's urban-based class structure is small as compared to the rural society. The 15 million industrial workers in the organized sector of the economy make up only 10% of the total workforce of 150 million. Of these, only 3% or 5 million work in large modern factories. The industrial workforce, moreover, is not only small, but its portion of the total labor force has also remained remarkably stable over the past several decades. Rural India now comprises of 66% of the population, and some 70% of the labor force is engaged in agriculture. Despite the land reforms of late 1940s and early 1980s, the distribution of land ownership in rural India has been grossly unequal. In the early 1970s, over 96% of India's rural household owned less than 20 acres of land, 43% owned less than 5 acres, and 24% owned no land at all, with the percentage of landless labor increasing. The disparities in land ownership are revealed in the fact that 10% of the rural families hold 70% of the cultivable land. In comparison to this, the size of the urban population, 34%, represents a consumer market larger than the entire European Union. These changes in the rural-urban population and the emerging class structure have meant the evolution of new administrative policies, strategies and institutions. In the past 40 years, there has been a proliferation of a number of administrative institutions, authorities and agencies, both at the center as well as at the states, to cater to the strategies of integrated rural development and the needs of growing urban metropolitan centers, incredibly crowded, lacking in adequate housing, transportation, water and electricity, sewage and sanitation facilities. All these developments have further meant a keen political competition among various segmented social groups and cultural communities based on language, religion, region and caste, creating additional pressures on the administrative systems. The existence of a number of multifarious agencies with conflicting and overlapping jurisdictions have not only highlighted the problems of a united direction, control and coordination, but have also raised afresh the basic issue of centralization and decentralization and the relative autonomy of various units of administration. Women as human resource. Women in India have not been traditionally considered as vital element of human resource. Consciousness and awareness about women as a productive agent and the need for developing the potentialities of one half of the human resource in India was not reflected in the governmental policies of development till late 70s. And this despite the fact that the Constitution of India guarantees equal rights and opportunities for both men and women, not only in public employment, but also in all walks of life. The recognition of the productive capacities of women came as a result of a distinct shift on the issues of women's status and their role in the development after the release of the report of the National Committee on the Status of Women Towards Equality, which came at the start of the United Nations Women's Development Decade in 1970s. The report expressed great concern over the declining sex ratio and workforce participation of women, their displacement from work and concentration in subsistence agriculture, their lower life expectancy than males and higher mortality rates, pointed at their occupational and educational lag and noted the discrimination faced by women in paid and unpaid work. It commented upon their extremely poor participation in societal decision making and leading roles, whether as policy makers, politicians, planners, executives, as administrators or as top professionals. Women were really found to be at the bottom of the heap, a residual sex deprived of the basic needs of health, nutritional education, employment, in sum of a dignified human existence. Harnessing the potentialities of the weaker sections of the society. A unique feature of the Indian constitutional system is the provision for according positive discrimination to the person belonging to the weaker sections of the community and to harness them as a workforce for public employment. In pursuance of the constitutional provisions contained in the Article 16D and 35, various instructions have been issued by the government from time to time proving for reservation in public services for the members of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. After 72 years of independence, India's achievements in regard to life expectancy, literacy, health and poverty alleviation compare unfavorably with many other developing countries. The record is very uneven across various states. Furthermore, there are disquieting trends in regional disparities with respect to overall economic development, which need to be addressed by a combination of central government policies and more determined efforts by lagging states to avail of opportunities for faster development. It is necessary, therefore, that effective public programs implemented through local participation and accountability must become the norm for future progress. To sustain and accelerate the growth of economy and employment while ensuring low inflation, the economic policies followed in India must combine fiscal discipline with rapid economic reforms where necessary. In conclusion, however, it should be remembered that no amount of planning and thinking in all these areas would be useful unless the government is capable enough to take hard and unpleasant decisions and has the will and capacity to implement and continuously monitor and evaluate their impact. At the same time, the political leadership has to demonstrate its own stable from corrupt and criminal influences and setting ethical standards of good governance both at the political and administrative levels. The process of modernization of state and administration need an active and constitutional association of people at all levels of the governmental structure in order to realize the goals the society sets for itself.